Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Loading Screen, a podcast about games, game development, and my game development journey. This is episode 4. If we haven't met, my name is Aaron. I run Eventide Game Studios. I've been a hobby solo game dev for about 4 years now. I am the creator of Abridged, which is currently on Steam. Abridged is a Sokoban style puzzle game. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about getting back into game development after taking a long break. Then I have some personal updates we can talk about, then some games I've been playing, and then a game dev update. So let's get into it. Getting back into game development after taking a long break. So there have been times in my game development journey where, especially with my wrists acting up, which we'll talk about later too, I just can't program or basically work on my game as much as I'd like to. Or simply you just burn out on your game. And so you take your break, but when you want to get back into it, there's some challenges that go along with that. And I've gone through this a few times, so I guess I just want to share some tips I have and my own personal experience of how I broke through this. So the first tip I have is to really just play your game. And don't even look at the code, don't even do anything, just play it. And the whole idea is that you want to get back into the groove of what you're looking for. Plus, this has the added benefit of you're looking at it with fresh eyes too. So you'll play, you'll say like, oh yeah, I was working on this feature, it doesn't have this, and you can identify things that your game is missing and things that you want to add to it. But it also gives you a different lens to look at it too, of maybe there was something that you didn't see, of like, maybe this UI isn't clear, or maybe there's a certain functionality that you want to add. And I think this really gets you back into the groove of thinking like how you were when you were designing it, thinking about how you were programming it as you were working on it before you stop. And you really want to try to get that magic that is the reason why you started to work on the game in the first place. I think this brings it back a little bit. So once you have that, you have maybe features that you want to add, some things that the game is missing. You want to write all these down. And you can go into a debate of writing it down physically versus notes. Just write notes. You want to write down all these things that you want to add or want to work on. Then you want to keep breaking down the features until you have something that you could easily do. And you want to reduce the friction from you having that feature to you actually working on it as much as possible. So like an example I have right now is that I want to be able to select a consumable card and use a consumable card. Well, an idea would be, okay, I already have the card selection down. Okay, so that's done. But how do I use a card? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean it just gets destroyed? Well, that's something I can do easily. Okay, so I put that in. Then maybe it's actually applying the effect that the card has on it to another card. So that's actually applying the mechanic to it. And then a byproduct of that is now when you apply the mechanic, the card will automatically get destroyed. So it's just trying to layer these things into small problems so that you can easily do them. And this might sound pretty trivial, but you want to make it as easy that you can say like, okay, duh, like I could do that. But this will really get you going. So once you have this down, you're like, okay, I have this. There comes a time where it's going to be a struggle or feel hard to actually, okay, I have an idea and I know what to do, but actually doing it. And this is just something that I think most people stop at, but I don't have data on this, but this is where I feel like most people would stop because it doesn't feel easy to do the things anymore, to actually make the game. And the only way I found is to really just push through this. And that's why getting that magic back from before and breaking it down as easily as you can to make it so you could just actually start working on this. It's going to feel like you're struggling and feel very difficult when you want to actually apply these things. You're going to need to look through the code. And personally, I've just had to muscle through a lot of it. Emotionally, like physically, like where are things located, what is doing what, and you kind of need to sort of slog through it a little bit. But eventually, like since I push through it and I have a more, I'll say, stubborn approach to it, that there comes to a point where I eventually just break. I don't know how to describe this break, but I eventually just like stop feeling like, okay, trying to like almost impress myself and just say, okay, what do I actually need to know so that I can move forward? And that's where the real learning starts to happen, of like, I start to know where to put things, remembering how the code is oriented, what is getting called where. And from that point on, I noticed a drastic improvement in my productivity once I can get to that point. And then from there, you keep doing that. You add little bits of code. You try to add little bits of content to those features that you wrote down earlier. And the whole overarching idea behind all of these tips is that you want to get and build momentum. These are hopefully going to be small wins that you can accomplish so that you can keep working on it. Because when you realize, oh, hey, I did this small thing, can I do it again? And you do it again. You're like, oh, hey, okay, I did that. Maybe can I do something a little bit bigger? Oh, hey, I did do that. And those 3 small things equal 1 big thing. And you notice the big change in your game. And then you get that sort of satisfaction and that rush that like, okay, I'm back in the groove of making my game. And I think that is what I found to be the best way to get back into game development after a long break. If you have any other ideas, I'd love to hear them. I'm sure there's other tips and tricks. So to repeat them, it's first, play your game. Second is to break down features until you have something that you can easily do. Third is to power through the struggle. It might feel hard, but it will get easier as you're doing it. And lastly, it's because you do all this to build momentum. So those are my tips that I have. And let's get into some personal updates. Let's see, the first one is I had a birthday of this past weekend, and that was a lot of fun. I got to travel back home, see some family. Didn't have any big plans. We did plan to go to the lake, but unfortunate circumstances with our boat and the check that they do to let you into the lake, that they denied us to it. So we ended up having to scrap that plan and ended up going to the beach instead. And that was a lot of fun. Got some sun, a little tan, a little sunburn too, but it was a lot of good fun. And then also had a small birthday party with my more extended family, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandma. And that was a lot of fun just to catch up with them. But one thing I did think that was a lot of fun was, so I'm a bit of a foodie, so I like to cook and barbecue, and obviously I like to eat food too, that I made a tri-tip and a tomahawk steak, and everyone loved it, and they were really good. I got this tri-tip, and it was like probably 4 pounds of tri-tip, and I marinated it for like 2 days in some spices. Then I seared them off real good, and then wrapped them up in foil and just cooked them on the grill, kind of low and slow. And it turned out spectacular. Besides the party, risks have been doing a little bit better, kind of since I was at home. I wasn't out on my computer. So I did some light typing, but I was mostly away from my computer. When I did get back, though, I did buy a new gaming ergonomic keyboard. So I'm really looking forward to that. As for some games I've been playing since I've been traveling, I actually was fortunate enough to fly this time home. So I brought my Switch. I was gaming on playing. I did play Balatro a bit more. So take that as what you wish. I have it on my Switch and on my PC. But on my Switch, I did finally beat it on Purple Stake with the yellow deck. So the yellow deck it gives you $10 extra when you start a run. And Purple Stake is when it increases the scores that you have to beat every single round. It ramps up a little bit faster. And overall, the difficulty scaling in Balatro has definitely picked up a lot. I think the hardest one I've done so far is the blue stake, is when it really started to feel really hard and the difficulty started to really be there in the game. So the blue stake is you actually lose 1 discard per round. So you start off with 3 discards and 4 hands. So when you do blue stake, it does 4 hands and 2 discards. So you lose the 1. And I didn't realize how much I used the discards until that point, because I think I leaned on those a little bit too hard, and this corrected that behavior pretty quickly. And then the other thing is, so when once I beat blue stake, you go into purple stake, but you actually get all of the previous stakes as well as like the score scaling happening. So there's a lot more RNG focus of trying to get a good build going. And so you tend to, I'll say, kind of half start rounds. You get maybe a good joker, but it just doesn't pound outright. Due to being on a controller on the Switch, that I misclick buttons here and there. Like I play a hand instead of discarding it and vice versa. So I've actually lost a couple runs due to that. And that's a bit unfortunate, but it definitely adds a lot of challenge and depth to it. And I think when you start to play on maybe the lower difficulties again, or when I start to, it definitely feel really weird. Maybe too weird, because I'm so used to playing at, not like I'm a really good, but playing at a higher difficulty versus not higher. Just the likelihood of me winning, I think, is going to be a lot higher and not need to, quote unquote, struggle so much when I play. So That's been mainly what I've been doing playing. As far as game dev goes, yeah, since I was away, no real big game dev updates. I did take some more notes. I've been trying to focus more on the theming and naming and mechanics and kind of how those are all interconnected. And I think that's one thing that Baldra does really well. It correlates the theme of whatever a card has for its jokers to an actual mechanic. So, like, for instance, you have Cloud 9, so it's however many 9s you have in your deck, that's how much money you get. So the correlation is there. There's other cards like Baron, which is you get 1.5 molts per every king in your hand. And, I mean, that just goes well with Baron, being you have this kind of king or dictator-like figure that he is essentially overtaking your hand, and that suits it very well. So that kind of theming is really what I'm after. It be so clear and crisp and so succinct that it's easily expressible, but also provides a lot of meaning, but also provides a lot of character, which I think is a very cool and meaningful thing to add to a game. And as far as other things that I'm trying to apply all the advice I just shared, I'm just trying to write down all the features that I want in the game, because I do want to finish this game in a reasonable amount of time, but there still is a lot of small quality of life features that I want to add, but also like a good portion of the game is still not there. As far as, like I mentioned, the consumable cards and being able to use them, I have them like all mapped out as far as they have this mechanic and they have kind of this name, but I can't apply these mechanics to a card. Like if I want to combine a card together to make another card, like what does that do? There's other things like destroying cards, making new cards, and there's just different levels to that I want to be able to do. And then giving all that feedback to the player while you're playing is another crucial part of that. So I'm trying to break this down into smaller pieces. There is a lot. Some stuff is not part of the main game loop, but some of it is, some of it isn't. I'm trying to not push the polish out and maybe some of the art and the sound effects that I think make it a good experience. Right now, I'm trying to focus on the main game loop and make sure that is fun, because if you don't, it just doesn't feel right to polish up something that maybe isn't maybe the funnest thing. Like, I want to be able to make this good experience that everyone can play and have a good time playing. And that's mainly been my update for this week. So I just want to say thank you for listening. If you want to join our email list to hear maybe some more news, hop onto that. Also hop into our Discord if you want to continue the conversation with some more gamers and game devs. If you have any other tips, I'd love to hear them there. Feel free to check out Abridge on Steam. I'll put links to the things I talked about in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.